Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, welcome to Soccer Today for Thursday, March 22nd. It's just a few days away from the beginning of the John Herdman era, Duane. But before we talk about the CanMNT national team's friendly in Spain this weekend, a big rumor, big even confirmation from the LA Times. Zlatan is coming to Major League Soccer.
Zlatan is coming. Yeah, look, this is like the worst kept secret on earth, basically. And it's kind of funny, though, Kevin, because this story, had it broken, say, even 2-3 years ago, would have been massive. It would have been like people would have been breaking in for like special edition podcasts, and, you know, breathless blogs would have been written. And, you know, Zlatan was younger, 2 years younger back then. But I think the league's just 2 years older now. And with the evolution of TAM, and you see the success of teams like Atlanta bringing in the young guys, and you know, just the sort of evolution of MLS. The response today to this, if you're looking at least the initial response amongst the hardcore bubble fans, is sigh. Like, oh God, we're gonna have to fight off, you know, retirement league stuff.
Can Zlatan be good here? He hasn't really played in Manchester United this season with injuries, and the injury he had last year and the recovery and everything. So how influential will he be when he comes? And I think that's what people are saying. Remember when Beckham was signed with MLS like a long time ago? How that changed everything? This is not the case. This is a Zlatan that might be coming to MLS too late, with the league surpassing where he is right now. You're onto something. I'm not convinced that will be, like, he's not even a DP. If he's with LA right now, he's not even DP worthy.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, obviously he has immense talent in terms of his ability to finish, especially. He has the capabilities, even at this age, I think, to have an impact on this league. But it's not how to build a team. It's not how to build a program that's going to be lasting moving forward. And this LA Galaxy model, which was the very best of MLS 2.0, they invented MLS 2.0, right? You know, we make jokes about Seattle invented, Atlanta invented. No, LA did really invent MLS 2.0. They were the ones that figured out how to use the DP to its maximum advantage. But what they did very well, LA, is that they found not only the high-power DPs in the terms of the Beckhams out there, but they also found, you know, stars that also had an impact on the game in a real way, and Robbie Keane being the guy. Robbie Keane was the original David Villa in a lot of ways, right? Like a poacher scorer that was still had a drive to play the game, that came and put it down. And that's our questions with Zlatan, is whether he's over here to be in Hollywood or whether he's over here to play soccer. And I'm not sure, and we won't be sure until we see it.
And that's the thing. Can he do it on a cold Saturday afternoon in Columbus? That will be the question. Does Zlatan know the amount of travel that is waiting for him if he does come to LA? A lot of travel, a lot of plane flights, and not all charters. I'm wondering how he's going to deal with that. Yeah, it's not as easy. That's what we keep on saying years after year. And now the players know, at least. Hopefully we think they should know. Then when you come over here, it's not a cakewalk. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be different. You'll have to adjust your play as a player. And the physical side is difficult. And a older Zlatan that's thinking of going to the World Cup this summer, we'll see if that happens. And then coming to MLS, it could be a diminished Zlatan even more than now.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I mean, I don't want to... I'm trying to be a bit contrarian here with this, because I have watched Zlatan his entire career, and I've seen how brilliant he can be. And I am not someone who just pumps the tire of MLS blindly. They are at a level where a guy of Zlatan's talents could come in and could be very successful, but it all depends on the drive and all those intangibles that you spoke of. And we've seen it time that come over here in the last few years that are a little past their prime, that just don't have that hunger anymore, and they don't succeed. That's the thing about MLS. This is at the point of its evolution where if you don't have a drive, you don't have a hunger, you don't have the desire to prove something still, you're not going to be successful. But LA, we're talking right now, we talked about the reaction, Kevin, but the reaction amongst the bubble isn't necessarily why this signing's happening. That's why it's an MLS 2.0 signing. This is about outside the bubble. This is about drawing new fans in. Zlatan is one of the very few figures in world football that I think does have the ability to draw fans in an out market like LA. They welcome out to see Zlatan. They welcome out to see Zlatan like they came out to see Beckham, like they came out to see Gretzky, like they came out to see Magic. That's LA's kind of town, right? And This is a guy that fits that image, and that's probably a big part of what this is about. I'd be curious to get inside Ziggy Smith's head right now and whether he wants him or not, because I suspect this is driven from the top, not necessarily from the team.
Yeah, Zlatan is not the type of player that the manager goes out and recruits, right? He's not the type of player that like Ziggy calls him on a Tuesday morning, like, "Hey, Zlatan, it's Ziggy Schmidt." Who? Who? Ziggy? No. Don't know you. Yeah, I'm a coach here in LA. How about you come? Yeah, it's not how it went down. It's agents and contracts and like the league itself. I'm like, you know what, Mr. Ibrahimovic? How about you come play here?
Yeah, and look, they've seen guys like Beckham and other players, and I keep bringing Beckham up here because this is a version of that, and this is as close to a Beckham-like signing since probably the Beckham signing in many ways, right? I can't think of another one that might sort of fits that bill in terms of the world power.
If Kaká would have come 3-4 years later, it would have been that. Like, Kaká could have been even bigger than Beckham if he would have been coming earlier. Outside of that, you're talking about a Drogba. You're talking about a Beckham.
Drogba's probably the closest, I would say. Kaká played a different kind of role, but yeah, for sure, in terms of name recognition.
Zlatan and Drogba, yeah, true. Well, you know what? If LA gets the return that Montreal did on Drogba, it'll be worth it. Drogba scored plenty of goals when you look at it with Montreal. Montreal made one deep playoff run with Drogba and had a good goal scoring, bigger gates, bigger attendance, more money revenue, more T-shirts sold, more memorabilia sold with Drogba, and he created the feeling that we have right now for it. So yeah, it does make a big difference, and we'll see in the coming weeks if it's true, if he's coming now, if he's coming as a DP, as a TAM. So it is interesting.
No, absolutely. Look, I'm not gonna lie. It's September 1st. I already looked. I looked when he comes to Toronto. It's September 1st. So Zlatan's going to the Axe. That's fun. Anyway, so yeah, it'll be a big zoo in there. And I always, like I say, I like to play contrarian in this. I agree with the soccer bubble groupthink when it comes to this isn't ideal for the development of the league. But I also understand the marketing side of things. And I do think that we're a little tad too cynical sometimes when it comes to the idea of like, my God, that's Zlatan in front of me, 20 feet away from me on a pitch, right? That's something we couldn't have imagined 15 years ago in this country, and the possibility of it happening is exciting to casual fans, and we shouldn't discount that because the sport is still growing in this part of the world, and there, I think, needs to be some kind of room for some level of this moving forward within MLS. I don't ever want to see, and this is not something everyone will agree with, I don't think it's ideal in the next 10 or 5-10 years if MLS completely moves away from the Schweinsteigers and the Zlatans and the Villas and the whoever. I think there's a role for them to play in growing the sport continually. Eventually, we'll create our own superstars and it won't be relevant anymore. But I think for now, as long as you're balancing it out with good development and smart TAM signings and trying to find good teams in other ways, it's okay to have a couple of these guys floating around for a little bit of star power. I don't have a problem with it.
No, I don't have a problem with it either. But is it a too late signing? I think that's why there's a certain reserve right now. People are not getting that excited about Zlatan. When it changes, when he comes, we'll see. But even right now, Manchester United, Zlatan is not even part of the equation. So it's like it happened too late. You know what it reminds me of? Steven Gerrard. That's maybe what I'm expecting out of Zlatan in LA. Not a whole lot. And I caught
for sure.
I caught Duane mid swig.
Yes, you did. Sorry about that. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Look, I don't know what more to involve this. We need to see what he looks like on the pitch. Ultimately, from a football perspective, which is how we should be breaking this down. We understand the marketing. He's going to sell shirts. There's no doubt about that. We just don't know what he's going to be like after that injury. And if he had not had that injury, if this was a year ago, I think I'd be more confident in saying I think he will have a couple years over here where he does pretty well. But you look at the history of DPs in this league, the big name ones, more of them kind of disappoint than they succeed. So I am reluctant to embrace this totally right now. Kevin, just a quick update. I'm going to just update you and the listeners at the same time. We're trying to get Gavin Day on the line from Spain. He's with Canada at the camp right now. He's going through some security issues right now. We're going to get him just as soon as he's off, but I thought we'd continue having a little bit of a talk about the.
We're getting Gavin actually on the line as we speak.
Okay,
Gavin joining us right now, and we apologize for the delay. It is difficult security-wise when we travel around the world and trying to get to a stadium, Gavin, huh? And we'll get Gavin on the line. Hello, Gavin. How are you today?
Can you hear us, Gavin?
Can you hear us, Gavin? Hello.
Live radio. All right.
Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll get Gavin on the line, and we will be right back.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Joining us live from Spain, Gavin Day. Gavin, can you hear us? Gavin, can you hear us? Gavin. Gavin, hello. We'll get trying to fix the gremlins. Duane, when you're looking at Canada and Spain, what is catching your attention right now against New Zealand and Spain?
The Liam Millar, I think, is something that's excited me a little bit. There's some video that leaked out there the other day of that young player scoring a nice little goal in training. Now, I hear myself as I'm saying that. It's a nice little goal in training. But that said, this is a guy that has scored pretty consistently at the Liverpool youth levels. You got to be careful hyping up guys that are at youth levels, even when they're on big clubs' names. But he's a player that Steven Gerrard has talked about quite a bit. That Liverpool seems somewhat high on and signed to a pro contract. So I'm hopeful to get a cap for him and to see what he looks like. That's one of my main focuses beyond the certain, what Herdman's going to do and stuff like that.
And hopefully that works. We're getting Gavin back
I heard someone briefly.
All right, Gavin, can you hear me? Gavin, can you hear us? Hello. Gavin. The thing is, he's there. I know he's there. He knows we're there. We can't hear each other. Sometimes that's how it rolls. I'm going to try to fix it. Duane, if you can just talk, I'm going to get Gavin on the line.
Okay, I'm going to continue to talk here about the Canada camp. I mean, this is a lot of dancing I'm going to do right now. I got my tap dancing shoes on earlier today. Look, as I said, I'll be very curious to see what John Herdman does in terms of tactics and all that, because this is the one weakness that we've talked about quite a bit with him. And weakness is maybe an unfair way to put this, because we're not too sure what it's going to look like. In the women's game, tactically speaking, he had a very dominant center forward that simply does not exist in the equivalent context on the men's side of things, right? There is no Christine Sinclair in the men's player pool. There is no one of her ilk. We're talking about a Messi-like player in the women's game up front for Canada, and your tactics evolve and are part of, you set up tactics like that based on the fact you have a player of that talent there. So it's really going to be difficult for him to evolve and to change what he's going to do in that particular case. So that's going to be interesting to watch there for sure. But by and large, we're talking about one of those purgatory friendlies that don't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. And I think that that's why this League of Nations idea is so vital moving forward. And I think that maybe while Kevin is trying to get Gavin on the line here, and hopefully we can work this out in some way, I will revisit that League of Nations a little bit, because I think a lot of people are still a little confused by it. Wait, Kevin, you there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm going to keep talking here.
Duane, I'm still here. I'm just trying to get Gavin, so you go ahead.
I know. I'm just talking way. I heard you a little interruption there. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the League of Nations again for those that have still not understood it. It's really not that complicated. There are three groups of leagues that are going to be created. A lot of people are confused by what Canada is entering into over the next little bit. It isn't actually part of this League of Nations, or the Nations League, they're calling it, I should say. It's a qualifying for it. It's a ranking tournament. They're going to play 3 teams spread across the ranking levels. So they're going to play one team that's around the same level as them, one team that's a little bit, one team that's way below them.
All right, we got Gavin on the line. Gavin, finally, we can hear you.
All right, go.
And you can hear us. How's everything?
Oh, no.
He could have hear us, and then it's not. All right. Duane, we'll continue like this here. Liam Millar, you've talked about, and it is impressive. And I'll let you ramble for a second. Truly sorry, listeners. We're trying to fix a way for Gavin to hear us. So, Duane.
Yes. Okay. Am I still talking? All right. Yeah. So it's basically they're going to be qualifying 1 through 40, whatever, and they're going to be placed in the league. Canada, I've heard people say, oh, they're going to be in the B level and all that. No, they're not. There's 16 teams going to be in each level. Canada will easily be in the A level. We will get regular friendlies against Mexico and the U.S. moving forward. That's all you need to know about the League of Nations, and why we won't have to be calling Gavin in Spain and trying to get him on the damn line. We'll be in Vancouver, and it's going to be easier. It's going to be awesome. That's what we're talking about here. So this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I think I'm about 2 minutes away from not being able to figure it. So we'll see if it's possible to get Gavin on the line today. Yeah, that's sometimes there's gremlins in the machines, and I don't even understand why it's happening.
I don't know, guys.
Can you hear us?
I hear you for half a second, and then that's it.
That's it, half a second, and that's it? Can you hear us now? All right, so I'm just going to call something else, Duane. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to try to get Gavin one last time. If not, we'll go on.
Okay, yeah. I do have some World Cup stuff that I want to talk about a little bit, so perhaps that's what we'll do. We'll set that up, and I hope the patience is out there for people to hold on for that Allison Lee interview that's coming on later, because even if you're not someone who follows the NWSL really closely, I think you'll get a lot of value out of the interview I did with Allison last night, or 2 nights ago, I should say. She touches on pretty much every team in the league.
Hello, Gavin. We got Gavin on the line on his cell phone. Hi, sorry for the delay. Finally, we got Gavin back. Gavin, after minutes and minutes of both of us trying to hear each other, finally we can. How are you this morning?
Well, sorry about this, guys. Clearly issues. And I thought I'd time zone at 4 o'clock. So I'm here now. I hope you guys are well, and I'm excited to do this.
We'll keep it short with Gavin. Obviously, Spain is a faraway country to talk on the phone. But Gavin, what is your thought right now this morning when you had trouble with with security? How are you seeing this friendly versus New Zealand?
It's still very early days. I talked with I talked with David Edgar. I talked with John Herdman, and I asked John how the team has treated to him as the coach. Some of them obviously know him as women's head coach. He said, you won't really know the trust factor in any of that until the big, real competitive games. So this is a chance. I think we're still in the getting to know you stage, and they want to win, and they want to win a particular way as well. But it's still in that let's not rush the judgment phase.
Yeah, no. Go ahead, Duane.
Yeah, Gavin, I guess one question I have is the mood of the players with this change. Are they seeming excited by John Herdman, or are you having trouble getting a take on that?
It looks very relaxed, and talking to Herdman, he wants to be chemistry and a trust within this group. So there was a lot of joking around. It seemed very, very laid back. They were obviously focused and talking a lot during the work, but then the practice, the training ended, and the veterans and the younger guys who were probably still feeling each other out, had no trouble sort of adapting. I saw Jason Leutwiler, the goalkeeper, joke to Chris Twardek, calling him Peter Crouch, and you can sort of see he's a tall, lanky kid. So the mood looks good. I think, and I think that is going to be a priority going forward, that there's trust on the field, there's trust off the field as well.
One question, and I'm wondering, Gavin, is after you watched Canada train a few times under Herdman, anything jumping out at you already?
He, Herdman has the reputation of bringing through the young talent. And, sort of what I grasped quickly this morning is that he is talking a lot to the young guys. There was, I think they sort of gave me the old Steve Ho when they were working on their tactical kind of stuff. But you can hear him talking to some of the younger guys, particularly shouting, their names every so often, kind of directing them where to go. And I think that's sort of one of his calling cards, is work with young talent. I heard Raheem Edwards did something that he liked really well, and heard him sort of say to him, you do that on a regular basis, you're going to score a lot of goals this season. So he's right in the middle of it. He's throwing himself right in. And any of his coaching, I hear a lot of them showing him directly. And he's not willing to waste time to get right in the middle of the field and get involved in running the show.
Gavin, you watched John Herdman closely when he was the manager of the women, and now you're seeing him with the men for the first time. Do you see any differences in how he's approaching things out there, or does it look pretty much the same as it did with the women?
It seems almost, I wouldn't say exactly identical, but it's very much the same. They have their small-sided stuff, and then they come together for 11v11. They end with their set pieces. The one thing I've noticed for the first time that he might have used and might have missed, but they have Joey Lombardi, who is out of Ontario and did a lot of work with the rec development on the women's side. The drone up above the field to get some aerial shots. So that's new to me, and John's never been one to resist turning to technology. So that's the new addition, but it sort of format-wise, it looks the same. They ended with Cesar Milan, who's their sports scientist on the women's side, and he wrapped things up, running a stretching session. But they also have Cesar, monitoring numbers on the side of the field, letting John know when their exertions are over and all that. So it looks very similar.
Drones, maybe that's what is going to be the key. Robots, drones. That's how we're going to get back to the World Cup. Gavin, the connection's not great, but I do appreciate your insight today. We'll let you go for now, and hopefully we'll touch back when you're on this side of the pond and we can hear you a little bit better.
Sounds good. So, guys, talk soon.
Perfect. Have a great day, Gavin. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with some United 2026 news quickly, and then we will go to Allison Lee and the NWSL interview.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Before we go to Allison Lee and the NWSL interview to preview the season that starts this weekend, it's April 2018. It's the kickoff of the NWSL. Duane, you had some United 2026 news to share with us.
I'm going to call this a strongly suggested rumor that I'm hearing from a couple different places right now. People that are connected to this tour that's going around. For those that don't know, when we spoke to the United bid last week, they were in Kuala Lumpur talking to the AFC delegates there. They're sort of all three of the joint bids are flying all around the world trying to gather up votes. And people that are reporting back in Canada are suggesting, at least a couple people that I've spoken to in the last couple of days, that things aren't looking good. That's my report. That in fact they're saying that based on what they're being told, they're kind of in panic mode right now, And they think that not only is Morocco set to win this thing, that it might not even be close, that they might gather somewhere close to 150 of the votes, which would be an absolute embarrassment for this united bid situation. And I can't even remember. I can't even comprehend what the fallout to that would be if that is the case. Now, I'm going to stress that this is just a couple sources that are talking about what they're hearing from people close to the Canadian side of the bid. But combining that with what we know and what we can sort of work out on our own, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, and it is very difficult to understand for those of us that have followed this bid over 4, 5, 6 years how this is unraveling so quickly. But it certainly is starting to appear more and more dangerous, or likely, or at least possible, that we're gonna have to find a different way the 2026 World Cup than
we should have been ourselves. We should have done what we always talked about since Two Solitudes, and that was Canada bidding for 2026, not United, not North America, Canada. But I guess.
Well, it comes down to geopolitics. And look,
damn, Donald, you're freaking up my sport. I was careful to catch myself here. Donald, now it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, well, the U.S. is always going to struggle to get votes in certain part of the world, regardless of who's in charge. Like, there is an anti-American sort of attitude out there that makes it very difficult for them to get support in Olympic bids too. If you look at the history of Olympic bids over the past few, they haven't done very well there. But this is a whole other level, obviously, with the certain, with the rhetoric that comes out of the United States, and whether you support them or not, you've got to understand that rhetoric does rub people the wrong way. And in fact, if you support him, you probably like that about him. So you're probably not arguing it, and you're probably not a soccer fan. So
probably not. You're probably not listening to us right now.
Yeah. But regardless, I'm trying to stay as apolitical as possible here. People who know my leanings, they know me. But look, the other side of this is I think there's a lot of factors going on here. And I've always felt that one of the keys to the North American bid was the fact that the 2030 World Cup is very badly wanted in Uruguay and Argentina. They want to host the Centennial World Cup because it was in Uruguay to start. That country can't support it onto its own. So supporting a multi-nation bid this time would set that up to make this back on the table after, Blatter had said that it wouldn't be on the table after 2002. And, for several campaigns that wasn't something that was possible. It's back on the table now. So you legitimize it by having one in Canada, America, and Mexico, and the United States. That's one factor. It seems less likely that they're going to go to the Americas because they kind of view the Americas as one in Europe, where the voting blocks are in a lot of ways twice in a row. So by having 22, that's the other side of it, I should say. They might not want to go to the Americas twice in a row. So it's perhaps something that's happening here it's been suggested to me, is that some of these South American votes, which is only 12, I think, 12 confederations down there, but still.
Yeah, they're going to somebody else in United 2026 to make sure that they're not going to they're going to have a strong bid in 2030 and not just a recent World Cup just finished.
They're trading votes. They're going, like, it's a different type of politicizing. Like in the past with the Exco, obviously there was a lot of, manila envelopes being passed around, and that was a problem. That no one's suggesting that, and it's not corrupt to trade a vote. It's politics.
Right. Yeah, it's politics. And when you're looking at the actual bid of Morocco, it's the exact opposite of the United 2026 bid. It's flamboyant, it's extravagant, it's a lot of brand new stadiums, it's billions and billions and billions of dollars creating white elephants all over Morocco. If you're looking at the recent history of FIFA, why are we surprised? We should have expected this. We should have been maybe more ready to be like, yeah, we're not going to get it. Yeah, we're not trying here to build thousands of new venues and hundreds of thousands of workers. Yeah, we're not doing like Qatar, Russia, and I guess Morocco.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if Africa votes as a bloc, they're halfway there already. That's, and you assume CONCACAF would vote as a bloc too. So, but that's less confederations. You look at your 39 votes versus 50 votes. That's the math, because the Canada, the United States, Mexico, and Nicaragua cannot vote at a CONCACAF Nicaragua because they're suspension. Canada, U.S., and Mexico because they're bidding. Morocco can't vote at Africa, so that's 50 and 39 or 38, 39, whatever. You'd have to look it up. It's in the high 30s at any rate. So there's a flip there. in the past, we sort of thought South America would be on North America's side, but if they're, in flux, then you kind of have to put them over there. You think the Middle East is probably going to go with the African bid, and some of that, like the Iberian Peninsula and so on and so forth, they're probably going to, just for geographical reasons, go, wait, it'd be nice to have a World Cup right there. You can travel there in a day, right? So there's a lot of challenges here.
You just take the ferry, you just cross the Strait of Gibraltar, and you're there.
And in Morocco is like a beautiful tourist destination. The problem with it is, the weakness of their bid is that they don't have the infrastructure built. They're going to have to build it, but they do have government support. There's probably less money in terms of the ticket sales there, but is there less money in terms of the TV sales because their time zone is in, it's in Central European time, right?
Yeah, it's a good time zone. It's like the normal soccer time zone for soccer fans around the world that are following Champions League and European soccer. So it's kind of like a great time zone for that.
Yeah, it works here in North America because it's the middle of the afternoon, and it works there because that's what they're used to. It's in the evenings. And, sort of you'd be the 10 o'clock, 10, 12, 2 would be what it would probably be, right?
Yeah.
And that would be very workable. The 10, 12, 2, I'm using the Eastern time zones here and whatever that corresponds over there. There's a lot of factors here that I think that I wrote an article 2 years ago saying Morocco could win this bid and was sort of laughed at then. I wrote an article a year ago that said Morocco could win the bid and I was less laughed at, but still laughed at. And now I wrote one the other day and no one said a thing. So
no one's laughing anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So again, I want to stress that I'm reporting what a couple people have told me. It's hearsay for the most part, but again, if you put together all these pieces, it's possible that this is getting a little bit dodgy. And the fallout's going to be insane, especially in the U.S. It'll be deafening in the U.S. The call for people to resign and everything else.
Yeah,
because this is a failure of leadership. Whereas up here, it'll be kind of less noticed, but amongst the soccer community, it'll be like, well, that was kind of where we're putting all our eggs in that basket, and now what? And it'll make it for an interesting debate when the Canadian presidential election comes around in 2019.
Yeah, and it does throw a big monkey wrench into everything if that actually happens. We'll know this in late June. We're now in the 90 days where the representative of the bids can travel the world and trying to gather support for their bid. That 90-day period started after the deposit of the bids last Friday, I believe. Duane, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Allison Lee of The Equalizer to preview the NWSL season. We'll be back tomorrow after the interview, as always, at 10 a.m. YouTube.com/sportspodcast network. And I would like to thank Vladimir Mathieu, and I would like to thank Michael as well. 2 new Patreons from yesterday with a whopping $10 and a big $1. Those make a big difference, bringing us to almost $120 a month. With your support, we actually don't lose money anymore. We can actually just break even and slowly be rewarded for our time and our research and our a lot of things that we're trying to learn to make sure you get a beautiful soccer show about the beautiful game. As always, Duane, I'll wish you a beautiful day and a great soccer. And to our listeners, enjoy the NWSL interview and as well, a great soccer.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And welcome back to Soccer Today, our NWSL preview. Joining us on the line is Allison Lee of The Equalizer. She's the assistant managing editor there. Allison, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm sort of interested to see what the NWSL does this year. I think it's really, the league is kind of at a crossroads in many ways to see where it goes moving forward, and a lot of news in the off season. Not all of it great, but sometimes that growing pains is you have to go through them to get to where you want to go, right?
Absolutely. It has been a very exciting off season. A lot has happened, and there's definitely been some good as well as the bad to kind of help balance it out. But a lot to look forward to for the new season, for sure.
Fair enough. All right, I want to start. Obviously, the worst that can happen is to lose a team. No one likes to see that, particularly the team that has history in the context of women's soccer, which is a little bit up and down and tumultuous to say the least. But the Breakers, Boston, did have a little bit of that. Was that inevitable? Was that something that could have been prevented? Was enough done to prevent the Boston Breakers from going under?
Well, if you talk to any of their fans, they're going to say that it was not inevitable and that enough was not done to keep it afloat this year. And it does seem like maybe there were some more last-ditch efforts that could have been implemented to keep the team in existence for another season until new ownership came in. But the biggest problem was the old owners were no longer interested in maintaining the team. They had a couple of new groups of owners that were interested, and those deals fell through last minute and unfortunately didn't leave the league or anyone with the Breakers organization enough time to get something lined up for the 2018 season. It is extremely sad to see it be, like you mentioned, the Breakers of all teams in the league, because they do date back to the WSA and WPS days, WPS lead, all of that. They definitely have a lot of history. They've had some absolutely legendary players rostered with them over their existence. They've had legendary coach Tony DeCicco, there with them. So even if you weren't a Boston Breakers fan, it was definitely very disappointing and sad to see them go, just because of what they have meant to professional women's soccer in the U.S. over all of the years.
Of course. And look, one thing it did do is it sort of started a bit of a conversation about what role mainstream media coverage has in creating popularity, whether it's a chicken-egg kind of thing. Obviously, I think we all agree, if we're listening to this interview, that women's sports gets the short end of the stick when it comes to coverage there. What can be done to sort of improve that beyond simply trying to drive bigger numbers in the stadium to force them into the situation?
Well, a lot of people say that because, like you said, there's not an interest in women's sports in general, not just women's soccer, but women's sports, that it doesn't warrant more mainstream media coverage. However, the mainstream media coverage is one of the best ways to generate more interest in the team itself, more fans going to games, all of that. So, we do have publications, like the Equalizer, that are specifically dedicated to just women's soccer. Then you also do have other women's sports sites. You do have like the Women's Game in Australia. You have Women's Soccer Zone in Europe that are dedicated to the sport, but those aren't mainstream media outlets. Getting more coverage with bigger outlets, especially local outlets, local newspapers, local TV stations, getting them to, be willing to cover the teams and the league in their newspapers and in their online formats. That's huge. But it's, a lot of people are justified not covering the sport because there's not an interest. And like you said, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation, but it's definitely where if there was more media coverage, then it would generate more interest, and, maybe something like what happened with the Breakers wouldn't have actually happened.
Yeah, well, you see, obviously, the attention that Save the Crew gets compared to the amount of attention that this got, and it's night and day, right? And that's not to put anything against the Save the Crew movement, which is worthwhile on its own, but and also not to compare men's to women's soccer, but I think it's illustrating that no one was really, other than hardcore women's fans, weren't really yelling about this, where this is an historic team that went away. It's sad, at any rate. Last question on the Boston situation. It has to do with ownership. You sort of alluded to it a little bit there. The owners weren't willing to sort of hang on for one more year to do what they needed to do to keep that name, that brand in that market. How important moving forward is it for NWSL to make sure that they get the right owners in place? I look back all the way back to those WPS years, and some of that ownership groups back then were a little dodgy too, and it sort of been the downfall of women's soccer over the years. Is it better to have less teams with better owners than to just sort of let everyone in that has enough of a check to write?
Well, that's a great question, and like you mentioned, there were some teams back in previous leagues with WSA and WPS that because of the financial situations that they put the teams in, because of things that happened off the field, it led to teams folding and then eventually the entire league's folding. And up until the NWSL, no league lasted longer than 3 seasons. So the NWSL is very much kind of carrying the burdens from the mistakes of their predecessors. And so they are very carefully evaluating ownership groups and making sure that they're going to abide by league rules. They are going to be able to put forth the standards that the league has, the minimum standards as far as facilities and, salary and all of that, treating the players like professional athletes and everything that, the league does have the rules and regulations for. So I think they are very much erring on the side of caution to prevent something like what has happened with each of the 2 previous leagues. But due diligence on their part, but it's also disappointing when, because of those things, it causes ownership groups that are interested in maintaining leagues or teams that have been around for several years in the league and even dating back to previous leagues, seeing them no longer be fielded. So, I have to give credit to the league for trying to prevent the total league from folding, but, there might have been a little bit more that could have been done at the same time to keep the Breakers around one more season until a more viable ownership group could step in.
All right, fair enough. There's a couple other stories that got a lot of attention in the offseason. One of them was the move of Kansas City to Utah to affiliate with the RSL down there with the Utah Royals. Talk about that move, what it means to lose the market in Kansas City and what it means to gain the market in Salt Lake.
Well, FC Kansas City, they were 2-time NWSL champions. One of only 2 teams to have won it 2 times in a row, and the only times total, and they're the only team to have won it in 2 consecutive seasons. So losing a team of that caliber, definitely, there's a little bit of more recent women's soccer history with them. But, there were games where last season they had like 450 fans in attendance. There were games where they had less than 1,000 fans in attendance, and sometimes it was because of weather and other extenuating circumstances. But when your team is in the playoff hunt, and that game will decide whether or not that FC Kansas City stays in the playoff hunt, and you don't have a large fan base there to support it, it does seem to raise some red flags. So it was disappointing to see a team like FC Kansas City also kind of not really leave the league, but end operation the way that it was just because of that. But I think the move to Utah has been wonderful. I'm honestly very impressed with everything I've seen out of Utah so far. Their owner, their general manager seems to be really embracing the idea of treating the women's game as equal to the men's game in every way that they're able to. Obviously, the league has salary caps that they do have to abide by that prevents them from paying them the same as Real Salt Lake's men's players. But as far as the facilities, some of the amenities and things like that they're doing for the players, so far it looks like everything they're doing has been top-notch. And it's going to be exciting to see if that off-the-field treatment translates to on-the-field once the season officially kicks off.
Fair enough, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they've done so well on the men's side there that I can't help but think that they're going to emulate that. That is a first-class sort of a situation down there. So fingers crossed on that one. The other major story that's recently sort of been breaking is the Kristen Press trade situation. First off, for our listeners that aren't familiar with that, can you just sort of set up what exactly is going down with that, what exactly is happening?
Yeah, well, to set up kind of the background, that's kind of lay the foundation for the current situation. On draft day in January, there was a 3-team trade deal that essentially sent Carly Lloyd and Janine Becky from Houston to Sky Blue. It sent Sam Kerr and Nikki Stanton from Sky Blue to Chicago. And then Kristen Press went from Chicago to Houston. It was kind of widely known among people in women's soccer that Kristen Press was unhappy in Chicago. Her time there was pretty much, it had run its course. And there were a couple of teams in the league that she was wanting to be traded to. From everything that has come out since, it sounds like Houston was not on that list, and yet that's where she got traded. There were reports when the trade announcement was made that, she knew she was going to Houston. She had agreed to play there, and everything was fine. But in the weeks that have, passed since then, she has not reported to camp with the Dash. They do currently still retain her rights, but it does sound as though there is a trade in the works. There have been reports that could be to Seattle, and that could be announced any day now. Almost as soon as that news dropped, there were a lot of conflicting stories saying that no, that wasn't really going to be the case. No teams had really, made a viable offer. So right now it's very much up in the air where Kristen Press is going to land, if it will be in the NWSL or if she'll possibly go overseas again and maybe train with the team and then join them officially once the transfer window opens back up. Or Sweden currently, I think, has their transfer window open for a little bit longer. So, she has played there before. That could be another possibility. So kind of just a waiting game right now to see where Kristen Press ends up.
A bit of a philosophical question for you here. It's one thing when you're talking about, a millionaire, a multimillionaire on the men's side of the game getting traded from one city to another and uprooting their life, having to change homes, having to move their family, all that sort of stuff. They have the financial ability to do that. It's quite another to have someone who's making at the best upper middle class income, at the worst sort of scraping by, to get moved without, any control basically on their own end, or very little control on their own end. Is it fair that the NWSL even has trading until the salaries catch up a little bit more?
I mean, I think it's hard to say that, you can't have trades in a professional sports league. A lot of people say that's something that comes with the territory and something to be expected. And it's kind of like in any job where you know the hazards ahead of time, the athletes know that they could be traded. But, the base salary, the minimum salary the league allows is around $15,000. So with players that aren't national team players and don't have the extra income coming from their national team duties, then, it is a little bit more difficult to have to pack up and sometimes move all the way across country for a job that's about 6 months out of the year and just basically keeping you above the poverty line. Luckily for Kristen Press, she is a U.S. allocated or federated player. So she does have her national team salary. So she does have a little bit more of an income than the minimum league salary, but it's still not, like you mentioned, it still doesn't compete with what even some of the lowest paid players in like MLS make. So it is a little bit more of a hardship. So honestly, if a player's in a position to, maybe strong arm a trade to a specific team or location where they want to play, or they want to hold out for, a little bit more money, I can't say that I blame them. I mean, if you have the ability to do that and to make the most of your own career, then, more power to you. Hopefully it'll get to the point where that won't be the case. And even the players in the league making the league minimum salary, don't have to worry about picking up second jobs or, not being able to afford a move across country when they do get traded.
Well, yeah, and a lot of sports that don't make the most at this level, they'll do camps, they'll do appearances, things like that to supplement their income, and they can be taken away at a snap of the fingers. That's unfortunate for sure. A couple more on this one, then we'll move into more general previews. Houston kind of has had a bit of a reputation, I guess. There's been some players that have been reluctant to go there. It's been a coaching change. Do you think that maybe they're in a position to sort of change that position, feeling, perception around them so that they can be a better destination for players moving forward?
I mean, Houston's an MLS-backed team. They definitely have resources at their fingertips, at their disposal that could be put into effect to make it a very attractive location for players of all calibers to go. However, from everything that you hear coming out of Houston, I don't think those resources are being implemented the way that they could be in regards to the women's game. And so it is making it so that other places are more attractive. I mean, if you look at Seattle, they do have the Sounders there, but they're not affiliated with them. They're not technically an MLS-backed team. Neither are the Chicago Red Stars, even though they do share Toyota Stadium with the Fire. So those are teams that are often thought to be more attractive than Houston, which is an MLS-backed team. So they definitely have the resources and ability, if they are willing to invest them and utilize them to the fullest in regards to the women's game. I really think also bringing in Vera Paul, I think she has a hard task and a long road against her this season as their new coach, but I think someone like her, and with her coaching repertoire and reputation, could be a coach that players would want to come and play for, as long as she's fully backed by the Houston Dash and Dynamo organization.
Fair enough. All right, final question before we move into the general. With the Kristen Pride situation, one of the leverages she was using was the possibility of playing in Europe. PSG, I believe, was the club that she was looking at. Is that going to become more frequent? Is that the European route going to sort of start to catch up and maybe even overtake NWSL as an option for the top players? Or do you think that the North American model will remain the top club destination for the top players in the world for a while to come?
That's a really good question, honestly. I mean, we've seen players go overseas in the past, with Carly Lloyd to Manchester City, Alex Morgan to Lyon. Morgan Bryan is there now. Crystal Dunn just got back from Chelsea. Heather O'Reilly has been with Arsenal for multiple seasons now. So I think that, for players that maybe have put in a stint with the NWSL, and maybe are looking to grow or develop their game, or are simply looking for, more money, then that may very well be an option. The U.S. women's national team recently renegotiated their CBA to allow them to have more freedom to leave the NWSL and go overseas and play. And so I think that may be an option that you do see more of them pursue, just because of maybe better facilities, better standards around some of the teams that have been around for longer, also the opportunity for more money, and also just to pick up a different style of playing. Those players, though, when you talk to them, they often do still consider the NWSL to be one of the more competitive leagues, and they do tend to favor it for that reason. But I do think that we may see more players at least pursue options in Europe, maybe as, like I said, kind of a strong arm to negotiate a trade more to their favor, or just to, have another option as far as playing and compensation, which I honestly, we're getting players from Europe too. And so, the NWSL isn't, unattractive to players from other countries by any means, but I do think the league will have to continue and grow, especially in terms of salary and some of the minimum league standards, to make it as fully attractive to both domestic and players from abroad in the future.
Well, you look at the allocated players from Canada, Ashley Lawrence and Katisha Buchanan, of course, in terms of the European route, they would have been highly allocated players, I'm sure, within the NWSL if they chose to go that route. So, yeah, certainly amongst the Canadian players, there seems to be more of an inclination to look there at least equally. But that's something to certainly watch moving forward. All right, let's move to the teams. And I'm going to start with Portland because, well, how can you start any NWSL conversation without talking about the Thorns? They're really one of the top teams. They're becoming a dominant program, and is there a reason to suspect that they're not still amongst the favorites this year?
You know, everyone I've talked to, everything I've seen has Portland in the conversation to make the playoffs again. The few people that seem to think they might not have the same results this year as they have the past 2 years, when they first won the Shield, and then last year, of course, winning the NWSL championship. They have them in like 5th place, falling just short of playoffs. So I think they're definitely one of the teams that you have to talk about when it comes to the postseason. I actually got to talk to Mark Parsons at the end of last week a little bit about the upcoming season, and he talked about some of the things that they have been doing, continuing to work on defense to be one of the best or the best in the league, as well as working with the attack to replace some of the attacking talent of like Amandine Henry and Nadia Nadim, who have left to go back over to Europe. And then, of course, Allie Long was traded to Seattle. And Tobin Heath is going to be out. He said it's highly unlikely she'll play in the season opener in North Carolina, but they're going to be kind of looking at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th games about when she could return. So they are going to be missing some of their star power from last year, but they also do have some good, solid young players who can fill in some of those gaps. They did get 3 quality players from the dispersal draft of Boston Breakers, and Margaret Purse has really kind of stepped in and fit in with the team very nicely. So she could be someone that they go to when the Asian Cup's going on, when the Copa America's going on, and some of their international players will be unavailable for club duty.
Of course, Christine Sinclair still seems to be getting better this past year. I was ready to. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, she's like a fine wine. I mean, she really only gets better with age, and just when you think you've seen everything, she's peaked. She comes out and something about her game's different, or they've moved her into a slightly different position, and she has a slightly different role on the team, and yet she steps up and she fills that role perfectly. And her game, she constantly seems to be upping her game. And I mean, not to mention the veteran leadership that she brings. I mean, a player like Christine Sinclair is going to be an asset to any team she is on. And Portland is beyond lucky to have had her for as long as they have, because she's just one of the most reliable, steadfast players you can have on your roster.
Fair enough. Quick question from international level. I would have said no a couple years ago, but when she got 3 goals just in Algarve, is she going to get 12 more? Is she going to pass Abby?
You know, I think she's going to. I honestly do. And, you know, Canada doesn't necessarily play as many games as the U.S., doesn't necessarily play, some of the lower level teams that the U.S. have historically played for, like friendlies and victory tours and things like that. The U.S. have upped their game in past years. But, so she's had a little bit of a slower go of it than Abby did, but I think she will beat Abby's record, and honestly, I would love to see it happen.
Fair enough. All right, let's go back to NWSL now. We talked about Portland, but let's look at the top half. Give me who, if you're just coming in fresh, maybe you want to really pay attention to the NWSL this year, haven't really paid attention in the past. What teams should you be looking at that will be near the top, that will be giving you your best bang for your buck on your watching?
Portland's always, like you mentioned, always the team in that conversation that you should watch, and especially their home matches, and the environment, the atmosphere is like none other in the league. They're notorious for that, and equally hated for it by fans of other teams for it. But North Carolina, they won the Shield. They were defeated in the NWSL championship by 1 goal by Portland, and they have a lot of the same players returning, and they've added Crystal Dunn to their roster. They've also kind of tweaked their defense, which I think could answer some of the questions and kind of fix some of the problems they had there last year. So I think they're very much going to be a contender again this year. The Orlando Pride, they reached the playoffs in just their second year of existence. And again, they have some of their star players returning. Marta, Alex Morgan. You have Allie Krieger on defense, Ashlyn Harris in goal. I think they're very much going to be another playoff contender and give a lot of teams a lot of trouble this season. And Seattle Reign is, they've had a bit of a rough off season for fans. They lost Laura Harvey as a coach, but they did gain Vlatko Andonovski from FC Kansas City. They did have a couple of players depart during the off season, but they also gained a lot of players this off season that I think could be, really make them a force to be reckoned with. They, if they don't make the playoffs, I think they're going to be the team that's, in the 5th spot, but I think they're definitely going to be a fun one to watch this year. So those are the teams that I'm most excited to see take the field this weekend.
To be diplomatic about this, the Washington Spirit have not had the best couple of years. Is there any reason for fans of that club to think that maybe they might operate in a way that satisfies them a bit more in the near future?
They brought in a lot of talent this offseason. They got Rose Lavelle from the dispersal draft. They got the number 1 pick, Andy Sullivan, who just won the College Cup with Stanford back in December. They have Rebecca Quinn, who is a Canadian international player. They have a lot of individual talent, and it's going to be a big question of whether or not that talent can gel on the field and get results. They seem to be a little midfield heavy, but hopefully Jim Gabarra at the helm will be able to find a way to get the most out of the players, because they definitely have players to be excited about. NWSL Rookie of the Year Ashley Hatch from last year, now U.S. Women's National Team defender Taylor Smith got traded there this offseason. So, they're stacked with talent. It's just whether or not they can put that talent into an effective product on the field.
All right. By my calculations, we've touched on 7 of the 9 teams. So tell me a bit about Chicago and a bit about Sky Blue before I get your predictions on the season.
All right. Well, Chicago, they have been one of the best teams consistently in the league, reaching playoffs year after year after year, always just falling short of the final. They have a lot of the key players coming back again this year, and they also have Sam Kerr, which, any team that has Sam Kerr up top for them, you're going to have some goals scored. So she seems to be able to make something out of nothing in a lot of chances, sometimes by herself, but also she seems to be a player's player. Seems to have connections and on-field chemistry with just about anybody she's on the field with. So she's going to be fun to watch to see how she fits in with them. But they're a team currently, they have a lot of injuries. Julie Ertz, Vanessa DiBernardo, so a couple others that have injuries that prevented them from playing during preseason and could cause them to miss the first couple of weeks of the season. They also are not going to have Sam Kerr for the first part of the season because of Australia's World Cup qualifiers, which run through the month of April. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill the gaps left by the injuries and international duty. But once they get all their players healthy and back to play with their club, they definitely could be a team that could, again, get some really fun results and could give a lot of other teams some trouble.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's get your 4 playoff teams and who you think is going to be winning the Shield and the championship at the end. It's early, don't worry, no one will save it. Just do your hot take right now.
I'm going to go with Orlando is going to think they're going to be in the final. Think they're going to be taking on the Courage again. I think I'm gonna risk it all. I'm gonna say Orlando's gonna win it all. Tom Sermani, he's gonna get it done. Alex Morgan and Marta, they're going to keep working their on-field attacking chemistry and take the Pride all the way this year. I think the other 4 in playoffs though will probably be Seattle and Portland. Be fun to get a little Cascadia rivalry in the playoffs this year, because that's always the Cascadia rivalry games between Seattle and Portland are always some of the most fun and exciting to watch, regardless of what the final score may end up being. So I think those will be the 4 teams, but I think Orlando's going to be the one to pull it all off this year.
All right, Allison, thanks so much. That went a little longer than I said it was going to, but I've had so many questions. It's such an interesting season to look forward to. We'll hopefully have you back later on. Quickly, before we say goodbye, let the listeners know how they can follow you and how they can read your work.
Absolutely. I'm on The Equalizer. You can find us at equalizersoccer.com. And for all of my live tweeting shenanigans, you can follow me on Twitter at Allibecc, ALLIBECC.
Allison Lee, we'll be back just after this.
Thank you to Allison Lee and Gavin Day for their presence on the show today. Apologies for the audio difficulty early, the connection difficulty earlier with Gavin. He is in Spain to cover the Guinea's national team, so sometimes we're astonished on how we can talk to people around the world without a hitch. Sometimes it doesn't work, and we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. for another edition of Soccer Today. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at 24th Minute, that's Duane, and me at Kev Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.